Good afternoon, everyone. Again, a warm welcome to everybody
Good afternoon.
from Singapore, from Bangalore, from Delhi. And these geographical differences always excite me. And the possibilities have happened because of companies like yours, Sanjay, and other companies like Zoom, who have made this, a reality for us with such, it's become such a common thing now. And it's great. Coming to the topic about resilient leadership and disruptions, it's very clear all of us have experienced the disruption, the massive disruption of our times, but there have been other disruptions too. And Manas will bear testimony to the point of demonetization and how it disrupted our lives in India. But that's only one kind of disruption. But disruption spares none. As human beings, obviously, it all depends on how we respond, how we perceive the disruption and how we respond to it. Now, I just want to, for the benefit of the audience, give one small analogy. As a professor, I must tell you, I have to control myself from not talking, but I'll just give one analogy with your permission. And that analogy is of a huge ship trying to cross the Pacific Ocean. And there is a captain, and there is a massive storm, ahead, which hits you. The headwinds really are threatening you, and you are the captain of that ship. Now, technology notwithstanding, the reality is that it is you, your perceptions, your experience, your interpretations, which are going to decide how you steer that ship to safe harbors. And that's the way I view CEOs like yourselves who are navigating the uncertain and choppy waters and using your skills, multitude of skills, not just one or two, and handling not only the external storm, but also the realities, the people, so on and so forth. So with this broad perspective, I just would like to raise the first question and ask you all one by one. Maybe we'll start with Sanjay because he's far away from us, privileged, and ask you, Sanjay, how did the disruptions hit you all? And what did you do with the disruptions? And here, I'm interested in your perspective from your company and from your sector, whatever you have observed about the disruptions. Maybe you can take a few minutes and talk about it, and then we move on.
Thank you, Dr. Asha. So the question is so broad, I can talk for the rest of the time. But let me try to be succinct. So first of all, thank you so much for involving me into this very, very apt topic. And, it's always fun to connect back and see my Indian fellows, so thank you very much for that. So look, COVID-19 was something that was not taught in MBA or business schools. So none of us really knew how to react to this. Obviously, typically when a crisis like this hit, I think you have your antennas go up and you try to sort of conserve everything, because typically crisis leads to disaster, and disaster leads to convergence of economy and the business. That's a natural response to any crisis. And I think for us, I'll give you a bit of a perspective from CISCO and how as a leader I reacted to this. Of course, first week was a shock, and I think when a crisis hits you, you want to first look at your near there, and then I think when I say near there, I think we started with looking at welfare and well-being of our own employees. I have a pretty large organization across Asia Pacific, Japan, China, so it's people all over the place, and so we wanted to make sure our people are well, they're healthy, and most of all, they're connected, right? So that was kind of one. And the second, the ecosystem, in which we thrive on a daily basis, which is connecting with our partners, our ecosystem partners. That was, I would say, first couple of weeks, and ensuring that there is a lot of communication across the board. And I mean, we were fortunate, we had the tools, right? I mean, as you rightly mentioned. So we just went with a free offer to every, I think we started with our own employees and own partners around the globe. We have over 40,000 partners around the globe. So free WebEx, we made for 6 months, which then followed with free to everyone we could offer free to. So I think that really helped. I mean, we were probably one of the technology companies that kind of came up with those offers. Ensure we are digitally connected was the second thing. And I think as we reached the first month, I think we started now scratching, what are we going to do about our business? And I think it was a little bit, I call it starting with thinking from heart, but then I think you need to soon realize that this pandemic is pretty hard, nothing we had seen before. So what is the impact going to be on our business, on our supply chain, on our strategy? How will the business models evolve? I mean, all of these things started, becoming part of the discussions, right? And I think really, I think there was, as we progressed in the COVID, we realized that particularly our industry was a bit fortunate because for us, this was, I think it's pretty odd to say, it was like blessing in disguise because, my business runs on the amount of bits and bytes that you guys produce. And I know as the world went digital, you produce a lot of those bits and bytes, and which meant that the network capacities started falling short. I mean, we had a tremendous amount of rebound in our business. I think contrary to our thought process that we'll have to converge, we'll have to put a stop to expansions and so on and so forth. It was contrary. And I think, honestly, 1.5 years down the lane, we're still grappling with that. It is huge demand and supply is a challenge because what has happened is, as the world pivoted to digital is now into everything. Everything that can be connected is getting connected. And that means that the raw material for creating digital is now spread so thin that has become really a nightmare. And I think we are spending billions of dollars to make sure in mid and long term, we are at the front of the line. World was so dependent on East, China, Taiwan for semiconductors and so on. And I think that's become biggest problem. However, what the COVID did is it really fast-tracked the journey to digital. I don't know if you guys noticed me in India. I would be in any conference, talk about that digital is here, we should double down. I think it really fast-tracked the journey by at least 10 years. 5G was a big question mark. Is there money? Is there a business case? Now we're seeing really 5G becoming an answer to some of this, right? So from a business perspective, it is now turning out to be great. I just finished my quarter and it was my biggest quarter ever. So I think that was kind of a second piece to it, and I think the last one, which is about people well-being, and I personally believe, as we come out of this COVID, we will come into some kind of a hybrid world. We will never go back to what we were, and I think it's very important, while we feel, our costs are less and our demand is more. It's great for business, but long term, it's not good for the mental health of our employees, our ecosystem. So somewhere, I think creating that balance, I call it leading with empathy, leading with heart, understanding people's situation. I have a large population in Japan. Typically they live in small apartments. If you have 2 kids, ensuring that you are in the shoes of your employees. And I think these are a few things that come to mind, that we got hit with, and I must say we're still grappling with.
Right.
Yeah.
So to quickly butt in, I just wanted to highlight that in our previous session, it was a fireside chat, and we had a professor from ESCP London. He gave a lovely analogy. He said, you can, when there's a disruption, you can either fall back or you can fall forward. Your example, whatever you've been talking about, and your industry sector is about falling forward. And even falling forward requires to be managed. And maybe at a later point, you can talk a little bit about it. But right now, may I go to the gentleman in Bangalore, Manas Mohanty?
Good afternoon, the panelists and of course the participants. It's a great honor to be here because Pritam Singh, Professor Pritam Singh was a person through whose insights, scholarship, knowledge, and more importantly, empathy was a prism through which, when we look ourselves, we become a rainbow of colors. It is absolutely an amazing experience I had personally also. So it's a great honor to be here. So when this invitation came, I'll just take 2-3 minutes to give the context, then I'll go to what our other organization do because it's basically an honor of a great man. Pritam Singh was an ancient sage born in the modern times. He would have picked up one or two stanzas from Upanishads and expounded the concept of leadership as any way you call it in this pandemic time, then expounded it. So when this leadership, when this crisis came, I was in the head of currency management in RBI, and I was already in transition to this company. Okay, that was known. So the first thing I remembered during those days was the 16th sloka of Isavasya Upanishad. The sloka is like this. Andham tama pravishyanti ye vidya mupasate tato bhuya vibhate tamo ya yu vidyanam ratah. Very profound Sanskrit from Isavasya Upanishad. Into blinding darkness enter those who worship ignorance. Is the first line. No doubt about that. Those who are ignorant, obviously, they will enter into darkness. And it was a stage of great darkness when the pandemic hit, the disruption hit. But the next line, Tato bhuya ivatemo, those who delight in knowledge, Yayu vidyamrata, those who delight in knowledge enter into still greater darkness, as it were. You are knowledgeable, you are in command, you think you are in command. You can enter into greater darkness. This is what basically Isavasya Upanishad is telling. So therefore, when this was hitting, we had all the tools, we had all the experiences of managing, as Professor told in 2016. If we would have gone by that template, the arrogance of that template, I remember this, that you'll fall into the trap. Why it is, when we're telling the great darkness, that knowledge here basically means is your memory of doing something in some way. That is what exactly disruption is all about. We have to disrupt our memories. What are those memories? Our expertise, our experience, our confidence. These are the few factors. There are many factors which leadership, organizations, and people fall into. Therefore, this reminded me that the situation is completely different. Here we have, not many people would be knowing that everybody thought that we are digitally very prepared. The cash requirement will be absolutely very minimal. But people know things much better. Which is the best way to handle a crisis? Money in your pocket. If you have seen the data, it's simply the notes in circulation, which is the figure. It's in public domain. There is nothing divulging a secret. It's simply zoomed out. So when you reach currency to you in the ATM, not many people realize there will be the current company, which is a subsidiary company of RBI. There are 2,000 of our employees, 1,000 supporting staff, CISF. We have a government company with 5,000 people. We have 12,000 officers in the bank who are handling the currency chest. It will be something of the order of a few lakh people, including the drivers who reach to the ATMs and fit to the ATMs. So this is the ecosystem. So how do you really address this issue? Because nobody wants to have to physically do it. I'm not a digital company. How to do it physically? And there also, apprehension in the mind of the people. Will cash spread the pandemic? So keeping this in mind, we discuss our team that we have to put an understanding, a framework. So that framework, when I came to this company, because you have to start sending currency, we called it Saukya. Saukya means wellness. It has basically 3 C's: commitment, then you have communication, then the 3rd C was collaboration. But underlying this 3 C was a silent foundational C called compassion. Because you are dealing with the life of the people. So therefore, when you articulated this as a wellness concept for all the stakeholders, you reach a different type of understanding in the system. We call it Saukya, means wellness. It can be wellness of the people who are working with you, wellness of the families, wellness of the stakeholders, wellness of the people. So that provides the context, and that provides a purpose and meaning to overcome your fear. So that is what, in simple terms, we adopted. I'll not go into the nitty-gritties. Second concept, which I would tell you, you have a concept. So what does it mean? It does not mean that it will work. So I took the 4th sutra of Shiva Sutra. It's a very powerful sutra. And I must thank Professor Pritam Singh, 15 days with him, and Professor Asha Bhandarker. Every session will have something from the ancient textures then painted in modernity. So that put me into this journey of exploring modern leadership through these concepts. There had been severe disruptions. No disruption in Indian memory has been more than the Mahabharatas. I always ask a question. Suppose Mahabharata would not have happened. It would have been a completely different ball game. It is an established of a so-called dharma, the principles that would have gone for a toss. Suppose Duryodhan would have given these 5 villages. Suppose pandemic would not have happened. This is the question. So pandemics do work in a different ways. So I took that 4th sutra of the axiom of the Shiva Sutra. In fact, I told this out to our team. Udyamah Bhairava. Udyam is Bhairav. Effort is Bhairav. So what is Bhairav? Bhairav has a underlying linguistic, or in spiritual tradition is different, but in a leadership tradition it will be Bharan, means you create. You create a purpose. You create something new. Then Ra stands for Ravan, the creative destruction, Sanghar. Now, Ba stands for Vaman, means to expound, to phailana. So that means in a very intense creative process through a constructive communication at the heart of which is dissent, because your team is directly, it's a matter of life and death for them. How do you protect them? So the whole strategy, 1, 2, 3 was conceptualized. Then finally, we gave a call. That call I borrowed. Many of you might have read that famous novel of Albert Camus, The Plague. Plague, if you remember, was published in 1947. 1947 was absolutely traumatic for this country. In that, the main protagonist, Dr. Rieux, engages in a conversation with another character called Ramband. How to protect yourself from the plague. Plague can stand for anything. In that context, it was war. In this context, it's a pandemic. He says, you're right, Ramband, quite right. For nothing in the world would try to dissuade you from what you are going to do. It seems to me absolutely right and proper. However, there is one thing I must tell you. There is no question of heroism in all this. You really don't find a disruption, fight a challenge through heroism. It's no, because you require millions of heroes. You don't create overnight. Then he says, however, there is one thing I must tell you. There is no question of heroism in all this. It's a matter of common decency. That is an idea which may make people smile, but the only means of fighting a plague is common decency. That is what it is. If one is driven by a purpose, here the purpose was to keep the economy running. Digitization played, everything played, but cash was the heart of the people in the lowest of the society, and including me in Mumbai in those days, South Mumbai.
Thank you. Manas,
That is
lovely
what I
opening
share at this
remarks.
stage.
So Manas,
Yeah.
I just want to say that thank you for reminding us about the quintessential place from where Dr. Pritam Singh would do his, lectures, where he would bring in a wisdom from ancient Indian knowledge systems. Thank you for bringing that into this. And may I now go to Vipul?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, aapke industry mein, what were the disruptions and what was your day?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here on this, lecture of the Prism and very august gathering. First of all, wishing everybody the well-being and safety for everybody around. So I will talk about India and I'll talk about what happened with the company and some of the experiences what we have. And I'll borrow something from what Sanjay ji said and Manas ji said earlier about cash and innovation. So I think what happened was, and I'm very honestly saying, there was no book, no experience available when this happened. The only thing which was that China had experienced it earlier and the world was experiencing a little later. So there was a gap of about, I would say, 6 to 10 weeks between what they experienced and what the world experienced. And I think I still remember the day we had a board meeting and they were saying, guys, wrap up. We are doing the lockdown. That was, I think, 22nd of March, 2020. We have to close the office and the Prime Minister ji announced the lockdown. There was a trial for 1-day lockdown, but I think the writing on the wall was very clear that the country was going into lockdown. And at that point in time, there were no masks, no sanitizer, no guidelines, nothing. So it was, grounded, absolutely grounded the team. And I think, and I'll talk later about it before I close my session. I think the wisdom of, there was no one wisdom, there was no one leadership wisdom, it was collective wisdom. I think we gathered as a team on phone call, the WebEx, the Teams, and all the things came later. People didn't know how to use them. They all had them on the computer, but nobody knew how to use them. So there was a phone call. Okay, start this button, press that button. Okay, now you're online. That was how it worked, even for people like me and everybody in the company. So I think people, first thing was that, okay, let's look after our people. Businesses will happen. And that was a difficult decision because, working in a commercial world, people are driven by targets. And though the head office said, guys, look after people first, but there are always, challenges within the team. And we said, guys, let's stop all this. Let's sort out our people first. Let's sort out our factory first. So the government decided factories are going to be closed. Okay, they're closed. Distributors are not going to pay us. They're not going to pay us. Good. So we have an outstanding. We have workers' salary to pay. We knew that we're going to be in struggle and taking a leap from what Mr. Manas said. We were a cash-rich company. But suddenly we realized that all our money is gone. We had to pay our vendors. We said we can't let our vendors, suffer. And we had to pay our salaries. We went to the bank. We never borrowed in the last 3 years. And the banker said, you need money? I said, why do you need money? I said, this is the reason we need money. So our CFO had to go there and say, guys, we need money. And because of our credentials, we got the money. And we paid our vendors, settled them. We paid salaries to our employees. We settled them. And the distributors, we didn't ask them for money. We said, okay, look after your health, look after your safety. So I think the well-being became the #1 priority of the company. And I call that period as the lights were getting switched off. There's total darkness, can't produce. We only had very frequent calls with their employees to say, okay, this is what's happening. We said, okay, people want to make masks. We bought sewing machines and cloth was bought in our remote interior areas, and they got into government facilities to say, okay, we will make a mask with cloth. Workers volunteered. The first golden principle I think the company learned was empowerment. There was no guidelines we could issue from our office. We said, okay, whatever you think close to ground, take a decision. And empowerment, I think, became the key winning spree. Guy said, I'm going to do this. I said, okay, make sure only one golden rule. Health and safety cannot be compromised. Whatever you want to do, but these two are non-compromisable. But I think empowerment played a big role. Communication played a big role. And the third thing I said is that we kept on listening. Guy said, we used to have frequent meetings, say, tell us what's happening on the ground. Tell us what you're doing. I think listening became far more important in the leadership game. We didn't have the answers, but we heard everybody and collected as a team and said, okay, this is what we need to do. And then came out with our own game plan, structure, and ran with it. Then I think very important point was we found that, okay, the pandemic is here to stay. It's not going to go away. How are we going to reinvent our business? And I think we use that opportunity, is maybe not the right word to say so, but we said, okay, how will we reinvent ourselves? Now that we have to do our business de novo and fresh, what we'll do? We used to collect checks. We used to have drafts coming into our company. We said, stop it. We'll only take electronic money. Distributor said, we don't know. So you take your time. You do, but we shifted to a total electronic world of receiving money, making the orders. We told people we'll not move out of the house. I imagine a sales organization doing that, absolutely critical. But we said we will invent, reinvent, but health and safety will not be compromised at any situation. In 6 months' time, we were ahead of the game. We had the cash back in the bank. We returned the loan. I think that was the period called lights are getting switched on. And then came the third phase. Guys said, okay, what do we do now? We're back to our business system. We had to redefine what is the meaning of winning in this time period. We said, okay, lights were switched off, lights were switched on. Now we will define winning. And I'm happy to share that as a team, the team came back and said, this is the meaning of redefining winning. And we said, okay, we heard everybody and we said, okay, these are the new targets. We had health targets, we had every kind of numbers up there and says, if you do this by the end of the year, we will call ourselves the winning period. I think we were able to achieve, probably overachieve some of the numbers out there, and we got the cash in the bank. people were safe, working from home, learned new skills, health and safety made a difference. I think just to summarize what I would say, I think the teams are able to invent new ways of working because we allowed empowerment and we were listening to the ground very much. And lastly, I would say one most important thing was we, though very difficult, very challenging, there were small celebrations. Okay, we achieved this target, we were all safe, no impact, and so on and so forth. But I think the real challenge happened in the year 2021, in the phase 2, which we survived, not much casualty, but I think that was probably the most emotional period for the companies and the ecosystem out there. And that's
Vipulji, I'm
what
going to butt in here.
Sure.
I'm going to butt in here if you don't mind, because you're raising a range of topics. First of all, you have already jumped my question and answered how you have built an organization, which is, capable of handling in difficult situation. But I had a quick question for all three of you, and only one-line answers, please, if you don't mind. Please indulge me if I'm asking this kind of a question. Was there not an emotional reaction, anxiety, nervousness, fear, insecurity? And what did you all do with that? Sanjay, you may start.
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit, it worked. I'll give you a bit geographical view of it. It worked very differently in different geographies I'm responsible for. Clearly, at a ground level, people didn't know how to cope with. We're IT. We're in IT business. We have tools. I used to have this video conferencing facility. By the way, I'm not using that today since you connected us through Zoom. So I never used it literally. For a meeting. If I have a meeting in Australia, I will take a flight from India or Singapore and fly all the way. I'll spend a whole week meeting a CEO for an hour. So anyway, so I think that was our biggest challenge. How do we make sure our people are well, they're connected, they're on the track, they're adapting to this new world. I think we ensured that every employee, including our partner and ecosystem, had a system that was working. They were connecting to the world, right? Starting with our group CEO, we started to have very frequent connects with our employees. I recall during that time, I invited Sri Ravi Shankar into our board meeting. We got multiple interventions on, connecting to our people. I was, you will not believe it, in one of the sessions, I was doing Sudarshan Kriya. Right. And my colleagues in Japan, Korea, I got a lot of, good responses. We're finding ways to connect with our people. And I think the biggest learning for me is that in a crisis like this, the vulnerability is the greatest leadership tool, which is, if I put that in perspective, which is be transparent to your people, tell them what really is happening. We didn't have answers to everything. So when you did that, when you were vulnerable, and I remember like 8 months into this, the previous year before COVID, I personally traveled 151 days that year, the previous year, and I'm stuck on a chair. I can tell you, thinking about this as an individual, it was a very different feeling, I was feeling sick, and being able to share that with 2,000 people on the call is an example of that vulnerability. And I think people related to you and they started opening up. One of the biggest challenges we have, in some parts of my geography, is that I think if you look at US, let me not give a stat from our region. If you look at US, 1 out of every 4 individuals has some sort of mental health issue. I think the number is staggering in some of the parts of this region. So the problem is that bad. Imagine if you do not curb up that issue, if you do not deal with that issue, you will have half, 1/4 of your employee base sick. They will not be able to be productive and produce. All right. So I think that was clearly, I think I went a bit over, but that was clearly one big piece of the equation, making sure our people are healthy, they're connected, they're adapting to this new norms. And we did multiple interventions, starting with, as I said, the interventions for well-being, yogas on the chair, musical festivals, name it, everything we could do to make sure that we have a reason to connect with this. So that was really the first thing. The second was giving people the hope, because a lot of people, I started getting questions, because I work for an American company, we're pretty cutthroat. So are you going to fire us? Because we generally prune low performance every year. I mean, that was a tradition for multiple years, and then people started asking, "Are you going to fire us? I have 3 kids." So making sure we give people new hope. I think Mr. Vipul talked about it a little bit. Showing them the new horizons. I started a program called Mission to Mars. Making impossible possible, and we had a number of things under that, which was telling people, even in this state that we are, there is new opportunities, and which was, honestly, at that point, it was a little bit of a thought leadership or vision. It came out true. I mean, today, if you look at our software engineers, the productivity in terms of writing the code has increased by 30-35% in all geographies. Our market demand has grown almost twofolds, and so on and so forth. So I think giving people that hope and see, even in this crisis, there is an opportunity for us. And I think, yes, we needed to adjust a lot of things. A lot of my business is B2B, which is depended on, personal intimacy with the C-level who take decisions. So we had to pivot. I mean, you just couldn't meet people anymore, right? So we started something called Digital Avatar, which is, how do we connect with all our CXOs around the region, almost in the same way we did when we met them one-on-one. So we started shipping, these small units, which is like video conferencing units, which is like one touch. If you have an internet connectivity, it's a one touch to get into a conference, right? So that was to make sure that we can reach them whenever we want. And that was appreciated, because that also created productivity of those guys. So I can go on and on, but these were a few things that honestly, we did.
But if I butt in here, excuse me, what you have actually brought out very beautifully, the description that you've given, is that as the captain of the ship, you have given the perspective, and you have tried to be closer to the people. People have related to you. You have handled their insecurities. And I think that's what you've done, which is so essential to build resilience among the people. Because when we talk of resilient leadership, the leader has to be resilient, no doubt, in disruptions, but also has to create resilience among the people. And I think it's a great example that you have given right now. So I would like to now move to Manas. Manas.
So, as you see, I'll first give one-line answer, and of course, Sanjay also has exceeded, so I will take that opportunity.
It is, feel free. It is your panel.
No, just a minute.
Passion takes over.
No. As a resilient leader, why afraid to be afraid?
Sorry?
As a resilient leader, I am not afraid to be afraid.
Right.
I'm a human being. And anybody in this panel or in the audience or anywhere, can anybody say he was not afraid?
Yeah, agree.
Yes, it was. It was a matter of life and death. Let us not mix about the things.
Yeah.
So I, in my interactions, never, ever told there is no fear.
Right.
Very, very clear. But how to overcome fear? But I can do one thing. In the units where we're working, one of them in a very remote village in Bengal, when both your parents are in hospital, what prevents me to send a pack of chocolates to the kid who is alone at home? That is overcoming fear. Okay. So therefore, what we did is we had a 24/7 digital app, mobile based, which was linked to a 24/7 control and command system, which sees the security and the movement of treasure. That was linked to that so that for any hospital medical emergencies, you can reach it. That was a big stand that yes, you don't be afraid because we are facing fear on its face through whatever best you can do. This is one. The second is every day, hundreds of individual data of family members and individuals who are suffering was analyzed for hours together, and they were given an assurance that whatever best possible is to be done. It requires tremendous amount of patience, listening, and overcoming an ego. When an industrial worker's son can ring you that my father is not getting an ICU, and you say, I'll move heavens and earth and give it. Another explicit assurance we gave, in addition to that special policy that government brought in through IRDA, Corona Kavach. I had given on record, I told many times it to the top management, whatever may be the expenditure, we will bear it. And I had not gone to the board. The board was very generous afterwards. They gave all the powers to sanction it. It was tremendous amount of money. It does not happen in public sector. Please, both of you are in private sector. I'm in a public sector. I'm bound by a lot of frameworks. Okay.
Right.
Another thing my team did, I'm very proud of that. How they did, I don't know. When the lockdown was over, in between also, because during lockdown, the cash was moving. There was no lockdown for us. Okay. But in production side, there was a situation, again, a lot of people are affected. I said, I can't stop production. They said, we'll do one thing. We'll give a concept called advance compensation off. You give us 6 days close down, we'll work on holidays and Sundays without any incentive, any overtime. That's the situation. As a resilient group, you rise above yourself because you realize when you discuss them in the communicate them, you tell them that, do you know who are in the initial stages, who are the people who drawing the maximum cash? People in Tripura, people in Lakshadweep, people in the tribal areas of Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, if you see the ATM data, they were withdrawing. When you tell them, they immediately connect because many of them are from different backgrounds. So the connectivity happens when you actually make it not your employees tell that, yes, we are doing a sovereign function of printing, supplying currency, and we are reaching to the person either in Tripura or in the Lakshadweep and Chhattisgarh. So fear, accept fear, say that, yes, I'm afraid. Second is face fear through hope. And the common decency of sending a chocolate to a child is just a metaphor. Actually, we did it. Then the third is link it to the bigger purpose. People always like to exceed. In fact, the pandemic, in fact, this is not the only disruption. So many will come. I'll come to that if you give me in the wrap-up time.
Next.
Just tell in 3 lines. Then, therefore, a new purpose-driven individual within the resilient organization have to be created. And pandemic has given that hope. That's much I want to tell us.
Right. Vipul ji, your turn.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's very well said. I think the most, absolutely, there was fear. There is no denying of the fact, Asha ji, there was fear. There was fear in me. There was fear in the team, and there was fear in the company. So what do we do? So we cannot let negative energy, flow through the system. We have to recognize, yes, there is a fear, but what do we do with the fear? So we had many things about, counseling. We had doctors. We had one point in time a series of doctors doing sessions on COVID management, not only for us, but even for our channel partners. Our distributors said we don't have access to doctors, so we had got a panel of doctors to work with us and said just take sessions. What is COVID? How do we manage? What is the protocol and so on. At some point in time, medicine was not available, so we had to procure medicines in one place and ship them to other parts of the country. At one point in time, simple things like oxygen concentrator was not available. We got it from our company from China, sent us about 200 of them. And we said we don't want to keep them in one location. We send them all over the country. And I was happened to speak to one distributor recently. I said, "How are you?" He said, "Very well." He said, "When I raise my hand to say, do I need help? My near and dear and family just say we don't have it. But here was your guy from the company who said, okay, I have one oxygen concentrator lying in this place. Do you want it? I can move it to you." So I think, and I did not know that this has moved to him. So there was somebody on the ground who took the decision, took the empowerment and said, it's in the larger ecosystem, go ahead and do it. There were people in so I think the moot point is that you allowed people to take decisions. You allowed people to do what is close to the ground. And Dr. Mane said there was people on the ground saying, I need to do this. Now, if you wait for the normal system of approvals to come, it will never happen. So we said, guys, do what you think is good. Health safety is important. The fear will not go away. I think the pandemic, I think just want to make one statement here. I think a lot of good will come because I very strongly believe the wounds will heal, but the scar will not go away. It'll take quite some time. The pandemic has left a big scar. It'll take years and generations to go away. But what people have realized is very importantly is that the values have come out much stronger. The cultures in the company have come out much stronger. Recently, just before the meeting, we had our, we had a management team meeting in the morning, and they were presenting one voice survey. Since Dr. Peter Singh is known for, so I asked the girl who presented you're presenting the Luminous data, it looks good. Can you tell me what's happening in other companies? Because we live in a relative world. She said that they said we have come well prepared for this question. So the one voice survey team said that, okay, you have done well. You've done consistently well because you focused on health and well-being. And a lot of companies have done, a lot of good companies have done that, which has resulted in overall engagement score going up in a lot of good companies. So I think the consciousness about the human being, the consciousness of people is always there, but I think it's gone to a next level, a next reach, and that will continue. And that's the good part. It's not that the COVID will go away and some of the good things will disappear. I think those will continue, and good companies will take it to the next level. As Sanjay said, move to the hybrid model, look at how we can get efficiency better, how we can do things in a better manner. A lot of things we just don't need to do from tomorrow. Those are the opportunities to look at it and continue to focus on the human being, and the focus on the well-being, I think, is something which is here to stay.
Lovely, lovely description. In fact, I did not, it was, remiss of me, the points that you made about how to build a resilient organization are very well taken, where you're talking about empowerment, clear values, communication and listening, more listening than talking, reinventing the business, small wins and celebrations. So you have given us a recipe of how to build a resilient organization. I think that's fantastic. One thing which is left, and this will be a last round for all of us, and I hope you will give me 5 minutes to share my thoughts at the end. Apart from the questions, if I don't know if we'll get questions, if we don't, no problem. How can we build resilience among people. And this, I think, we'll start again in the same way, Sanjay, Manas, and Vipul.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I think Manas, and I think in his way, and then Vipul repeated, was, giving people the empowerment and the trust, right? So that is because leadership, for me these days is virtual. I mean, me and other multinational executives, because we're spread all over, we used to be on the plane all the time because we probably didn't fully trust and empower. There was no need to go and spend a day in Japan. What will you do in that 2 hours meeting with the? Yeah, so it was. I think that I think is very, very important, and I think learning for all the organizations that you can empower more, you can delegate more, you can trust more. I think that's kind of number one. Second is that giving people ability to fail, because when you're thrown a crisis which you have no experience, and we in our company we start something, we call it fail fast. That means you are allowed to try new things, and it's okay that you will fail, but fail fast, meaning don't start crying over what you fail at, move to the next thing, So I think that's the second thing, giving them ability to try things, giving them possibilities to embrace failure. Because what we noticed was that, it brought in a lot of new innovation into the mix. People didn't dare to do things, and they were really creative things. They were very innovative things, but just they didn't dare to do it. So by giving them that power and that ability, we started to see new things emerging. Typically you had a recipe book. It comes from our top leadership. It hits us, then we take that further. It was like delegation of levels. Now I think with this change, we believe there's a lot of power we're getting by giving people ability to shape the strategy, and I think that's kind of second big thing that will kind of build a resilient, holistic leadership. I'm not talking about one individual resilient leader. I'm talking about how do you creep in a resiliency into the organization. I think that's kind of number three, and I think number four obviously is, we call it, we give them a day back, because we realize that in this digital world and with an organization like ours, we have all the tools, and you can be working 24/7. To be honest, if I count my headquarters, I can be awake whole 24 hours and still not end, right? So we ask teams to sort of take time. You can just block your calendar for an hour, go for a walk, and it's okay to say no to the meetings. You don't have to be in every meeting. So that gave them ability to define what's important for them. I started a practice almost after the COVID hit, already after 1 quarter. We call it a practice of delegation, where basically I took my mission, my target, my dashboard that I'm committed to deliver for my organization. I disseminated that all the way to the last level in the organization. That meaning a systems engineer or even a trainee in my organization has a line of sight to that dashboard at the top, right? So I think that was a really, really powerful tool, and something that I think we will continue to do as we progress, right? So these were 3 or 4 things that I think will help create resilient leadership across the organization.
Great. That's very, very insightful. Thank you. Manas?
Yeah. So you see, I want to make one point. There is no permanent resilient leader.
Right.
Nobody is a permanent resilient leader. And some of you have highlighted. So the question is, if this question you would have put to Einstein, he would have said, no problem can be solved from the same consciousness that created it. We must learn to see the world anew. So resilient leadership at all levels, or as some define, leader is a god of small things. You create gods with different levels of consciousness, is seeking a new level of consciousness within leaders themselves, our own people, and within organizations. I'll give 2 examples how communication works. We had a meeting in which I was there. The governor himself was there, not in relation to my organization, in relation to something in RBI. He started this. Manas, how are you? I said, I'm fine, sir. How are our team? I said, fine, sir. Then he tells one line, take the best care of them. In every meeting with my staff in my company, which is a subsidiary company, I said, governor has said this. That's absolutely fantastic one-line communication, which you won't find in any good manual. There is no template for that. Just one line. He has not told do this, do that. Okay. This is one point. The second point is that, which I want to highlight here because all of you are leaders in our own ways. In the plague novel, the pandemic is over. The small town of Oran is celebrating with firecrackers, like all of us are doing. We are doing well, doing fine. So Dr. Rex remembers such a joy, as he listened to the cry of joy arising from the town. Rex remembered that such joy is always imperiled. He knew that those jubilant crowd did not know but could have learned from books. These templates are books. Be kind, have purpose. These are books. That the plague bacillus never dies or disappears. For good. That's the word. For good. That it can lie dormant for years and years in furniture and linen chest. All the problems within the organization, within the society are lying around. We don't know. That it bides its time in bedrooms, cellars, trunks, and bookshelves. And perhaps the day would come for the bane and the enlightening of men. It roused up its rats again and set them forth to die in a happy city. When, as an organization, you are think that I am resilient, I'm very happy, my balance sheet looks very fine, my people have a purpose. This bacillus is lurking around us, within the organization, within our levels of consciousness, within the society, within the ecosystem. Coming back to my organization itself, the greatest learning was, despite a very serious backward integration and self-reliance in the sector, many of you might be knowing, there are few critical things still lies dark in the supply chains, global supply chains. Very small, niche items. That's the challenge for my company today. Okay, because cash is still, if you see the figures, it's absolutely in a different level despite all the digitization. Of course, Sanjay may not like this, but what I cannot help people dealing with cash, they decide to do something else. Therefore, my point is there is no fixed template.
Yes.
The words all of us have used is we have heard in the past, hope, leadership, engage with the team, give them hope, everything. It is a resilient leadership, is a continuous soul searching within oneself, within the team, in a listening mode, if I can use a modern word. Of course, it should be a word, awareness should be the word, proper word. And continuously seek new level of consciousness and feel vulnerable so that you are alert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vipulji, 2 minutes.
Sure. I think thanks very much. I think very well said by Sanjay ji and Manaji. I think I will just take a leaf out of a conceptual book. I think resilient leadership is the greatest example of situational leadership. I think the situations changed and resilient leadership rose to the occasion and made them happen. Tomorrow situation will change again. What we're discussing today is COVID. Tomorrow may be some other situation. They may be today. Most companies are facing what Sanjay said was, inflation, commodities not available, parts are not available. What do we do different? We have COVID at hand, they supply. I think it's the greatest example of situational leadership. And I think the resilient leaders are who recognize all these dots and nuances outside the organization and inside the organization. And are able
Thank
to
you.
join the dots and say, okay, guys, this is the external environment, this is the internal environment. This is the thing what we need to do is correct for the company at this point. Right or wrong, nobody can tell them. They will live with that judgment, they will live with the decision and take the decision, says, guys, we did it because of this reason. 5 years later, people will come and do critical evaluations. What is right, what is wrong, and write, pages about it. But a resilient leader is somebody who takes cognizance of the reality outside and inside, takes decisions, both from the mind and from the gut, and then flies with it.
Thank you. I think I'm going to speak a little now. And after that, there are two questions which are going to be directed to you all. It has come from the audience. But I know if I open the questions, then I will not get a chance to speak right now. And this conference has been inspired by the life and message of Dr. Pritam Singh. And I would, having been his student and then, co-researcher and co-author and everything for the last so many years, I would like to bring to the attention of all of you two analogies which he would often talk about and which I think from which we can draw conclusions about resilient leadership. One is the mythological figure of Neelkant. Neelkant, who absorbs the poison, who neither allows it to go into the head, nor does it allow it to corrupt the body. So it is held in the neck, which means that he's neither allowing himself to be poisoned as a leader, nor is he poisoning his entire organization. So that is one beautiful analogy, not allowing poison to permeate and percolate around. That is one analogy. And second beautiful analogy, again, one of the names of Sri Krishna, which he would talk about. You know that Krishna had many, many names and all these gods have multiple names, right? So there was one name which particularly stuck in my mind, and that is Ranchod. Krishna as Ranchod, which means somebody who is so egoless, who assesses a situation and says, oh no, now is not the right time, so let me withdraw. So that agility to be able to know when to attack, when to withdraw, when to neutralize, when to move away. I think that is a second learning from Dr. Pritam Singh I would like to bring to the fore. And lastly, a lot of learning from nature, right? Take the analogy of the wonderful bamboo bush. Bush, tree, grass, whatever it is. There are all kinds of descriptions about it on the internet. But it is considered to be the most hardy, strong, long-lasting kind of a plant or bush or tree. And if you observe it when there is a wind, it knows how to bend. It knows how to sway along with the wind. And that's how it survives. So from that point of view, three quick analogies I wanted to bring to the fore. And one last one, and this is how a leader can develop resilient leaders. And the analogy is of a potter. If any of you have seen how potters work, one hand is protecting the figure that is being created, and the other hand is, gently tapping, nudging, sometimes pushing, sometimes creating pain. And that's how a potter works. And that's how a leader is supposed to work, to create resilient leaders. So these are two things from my side. I have gotten it out from my sister. I think it was very relevant to speak.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Now we have two questions I'm going to raise. See, in the previous session, Manoj and Sanjeev Bikhchandani and all were talking about e-waste and climate change and regarding the threat of cyber attacks. So the question which is coming up here is, how can we build as leaders more resilient ecosystems that can take care and ensure that high disruptions don't happen because of attacks and other such things? So who would like to go?
Maybe I can start, because this is one of the issues that is really top of the agenda these days. We call it sustainability, or there's various or zero CO2 emissions or whatever from a technology perspective. So I think it's being responsible to the environment. And I think every corporate has to put in some bandwidth, some investment, some R&D dollars to make sure that while they're profiting from technology innovations, they're giving back to the environment. And I can tell you in our industry, for example, our company made an oath that by 2040 will have zero emissions. We create pretty high power, high energy guzzler equipment like data centers, telco switches, and we churn a huge amount of data and create a lot of energy. And I think that's a mammoth task we've taken as a company. But I think it's really. If you knew, I was in India for a few months when this hit, and you could see, I live in DLF, Aralis, we can see this blue Nile guy coming into. You couldn't imagine, because just as humans were polluting and making it dirty, we were indoors. The nature was coming so closer to us, and everything. Skies were looking blue, which was my biggest misery, when I spent 6 years in India. I was always struggling with my. I'm allergic to dust, and those days it was so clean, So I think that is what every company, every organization has to commit to, that bring in something that you give back to the nature, back to the environment. We in corporate, we call it sustainability, I think, so that will be my 2 cents on that.
Okay. One more question, because we just have 3 minutes here, which Vipul, Manas, one of you can take it. It's asking, the question is regarding what kind of a role leaders can play to ensure a more transparent and just organization and societies.
I can, make an attempt at that. Thanks. I think the question is, about communication. That are you being, do you want to communicate? Do you want to be transparent? It doesn't happen overnight. It's just not that, if one leader decides that I'm going to be transparent, it's not going to happen. People are not going to believe it. I think it's over a period of time. And, you allow people to ask you questions. There will be difficult questions people will ask you. There will be challenging ones. And some, for reasons of confidentiality, you may not answer, but there'll be a lot of them you can answer them, and those meetings are. So I think one thing which we have experienced personally that happened during the pandemic, we used to have our town halls, and we used to keep the last 5-10 minutes for question answer. And over the last, I would say 5 or 6 of the interaction seen, where the number of questions have gone up, and people asking questions, and they want to listen to the leader. Right. And it's not that you are always giving good news or bad news. They want to listen to the news first. Good or bad is very judgmental. We may believe it's bad news, but they may believe it's fair news. And with the millenniums coming in the organization, I think that's another aspect we have to realize. They want the transparency. Even if it's bad news, they want to hear it. They want to hear it from you.
Right.
And they may not find the answer. They don't want the answer, but they want to hear it from you.
Hear it from the horse's mouth. Yeah.
From the horse's mouth.
Yes.
Communicate as often as possible. Be fair. And something else, really, and people will ask. And the more the questions are, the more the happier I am in that call, because it shows engagement.
Lovely.
More the transparent.
Yeah. Sorry,
no, it's okay.
1 minute more, huh? Manas?
Sure. Yeah. So I will say that the transparency will come from the value system of the leaders. Okay, if people know where you draw the line. Okay, so it is in the personal self. The value systems we project ourselves through our business world, our personal world, and also are you allowing your people to disagree with you?
Right.
We don't do. Most of us is very difficult to do in a rigid structure. So allowing people to disagreement is the first step towards respect and to a transparent organization. I think that much I must tell you.
Thank you. Thank you. So from my side, I think it would be lovely to spend another hour. I'm sure we can go on and on, but I'm going to say thank you to you all and hand over to Sanjay.